All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name's Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And today we are going to be talking about the PlayStation 1 Classic that was announced recently, and also the possibility. I feel like we don't need to say possibility. It's coming. The N64 Classic. And also recently Nobuo Uematsu on his personal blog, he talked about him suffering an illness of some sorts, and he's taking a break, so it's likely he's not on the Final Fantasy VII Remake anymore. Then we have Tabata, or Tabata, however you want to pronounce his name, our favorite person to talk about. We're going to be talking about Final Fantasy 15 again, folks. So we're going to be talking about his recent interview with, I think it was Polygon, and he went through a bunch of stuff about the development history of Final Fantasy 15 and like what he wants to do in the future. So we're going to be kind of hitting some highlights from there and kind of talking about what we think about it. And then also we have some viewer suggested topics from last week's episode. So we had it from Leanne. She said, what are some characters you are liking or disliking from this month's RPG offering? I believe she's talking about Dragon Quest XI. So we're going to be talking about some of our favorite characters and not so favorite characters from Dragon Quest XI. And then Khan Pan, he asks, what are our top 5 or 10 favorite JRPG franchises? We're going to go with top 5 because top 10 is a little intense. And honestly, your 9th favorite JRPG franchise, do you even like that JRPG franchise? That's kind of distant on the list. I don't know. But anyways, so that's what we're going to be talking about this week. But before we get started with all that, Eric, what have you been playing this week?
Oh, I've been doing a couple things. Primarily, the Final Fantasy 14 4.4 patch came out last Tuesday. And I've been working with my raid team on the raid content. So that's been taking up a lot of time. If you're an FF14 fan or looking to get into it, like the story, the point of the story it is right now is just making me excited for the upcoming expansion. Like, it's going to get really big this time, and it's really cool. The raid tiers this time in this expansion have been revolved around Omega Weapon, and that story just concluded in this patch, and I will say that was really good. Also, I really enjoyed that. It's probably the coolest. I'll go out and say this without a doubt. This is the coolest interpretation of Omega Weapon ever done in the Final Fantasy series. Like, you get like deep and personal with this one.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you were kind of, we don't want to spoil anything, but it looks like it goes through a couple different transformations, and it looks really, really entertaining, at least from a visual spectacle.
Yeah, he's not part of the main story. He's part of the side quest raid storyline, but FF14 tells some pretty amazing side quest stories that can arguably feel as big in scope as the main story in some aspects. And it's it's really cool. And if you're playing 14, you haven't played it in a while, at least get on and look at this stuff. I mean, this is like some top-notch Final Fantasy going on in this. But there is that. I have also I downloaded Undertale on the Switch to see what it's like on there. I haven't played it too much of it yet, but I'm trying to go more the pacifist route instead of the kill everything in my sight route, which I did the first time.
Okay, so is that the way you went first time? Was you just killed everything?
Yeah, I didn't really think about it.
See, because on my recent playthrough, I feel like the game was kind of spoiled for me because I already knew you could take these different options. So I just tried to go the pacifist route. So I was interested in getting this game on the Switch. So I think when I do, I might actually go the exact opposite and do let me just kill everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm trying to be as pacifist as I can. If I get impatient enough, I'll be like, oh, screw it, die.
One every now and again is not a big deal. Yeah.
But another game I've been playing in my free time to, of course, I've been playing post-game Dragon Quest XI, but I did try out CrossCode that came out on Steam very recently, and I believe you did also.
Yep.
But before I step in anything, what did you think of it?
Well, I had already played the game because it's been there's been a really early version of the game available for quite some time that they've allowed people to play on their website, which is because it's in JavaScript, so you can basically play it in a browser, which I think is real cool. So I played a really early version of it like a year ago, and I really liked it then.
Oh yeah, it's HTML5, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know.
It said it before like the logo came up, I believe.
Okay, well, anyways, you can play it in your browser. It's cool. So anyways, I played it that way, and then I played it now on Steam. I actually purchased it because this is actually like the full game. The full game's out. You can play it from beginning to end, I believe. Whereas before, it would only let you play like 5 hours or something like that. And they've been fairly consistent with like fixing a lot of stuff and adding a lot of features into it. But I think it's a really, really cool indie game. It's really, really polished. I think the gameplay is really, really smooth. I really like the music. I like the art style. I really like this game. And I think you're kind of in the middle on it, which is, I think kind of shows where our tastes differ a little bit. But go ahead.
I'm more in the positive than the negative.
See, I would not even characterize it like that. I have barely anything negative to say. Go ahead.
Well, it's definitely worth its $15 to $20 price of admission.
Yeah.
Depending on the sale. Like there's a sale, as we're talking right now at this state, there is a sale going on where it's like $5 cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in getting it, then now's a good time to go out and get it. I think the combat is pretty smooth. I like the dodge mechanic. I like how you need to be more strategic in using between guard and dodging, because dodging isn't always going to save you. The boss or character may be too fast, so you have to utilize your guard for it. And I like how simplistic in nature it is. I was thinking that they're going to do some complicated skill tree type deal, but no, it's actually very simple. When you level up and what you choose are very basic. I don't feel like there's no real stat crunching to it, and the gear system's very simple. I like that, and the story's going in an interesting place that I like so far. Like you're a unique avatar, and there's something going on with the crossworld scene, and your avatar is sent in to like pseudo investigate, and also you have amnesia. But it is a cool concept that you're playing like an MMO, but not like it actually an MMO, similar to Dot Hack and Sword Art Online in a sense. But the style is very much 16-bit Super Nintendo era action adventure game, which everyone knows here that my favorite game's Zelda: A Link to the Past. So I feel right at home with something like that. But where the criticism for me lies mostly right now is the pacing, and mostly in the gameplay side of things, because I decided to do as many side quests as I can before I go to the next thing. And there's quests that are like level 3 to like level 8, and I do them all. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty easy stuff. Okay, I got myself to level 8 from it. And then I see the next quest are like level 13. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's encouraging me to start or continue the main story. So I'm going through the main story, and like I go, and these enemies are like up to level 18, and all the side quests around here are level 18, and things are tougher and harder to kill. And the boss that's like okay to die to, but you can still win against.
Right.
Just completely wrecked me just because I was some level shorter. I mean, like I had the best gear I could possibly find.
Yeah.
But I was level 8 and he destroyed me. And I felt like my level is way off here. I'm like, I just did a bunch of side quests and I just went through the main story progression. I'm like, now I'm feeling encouraged to grind monsters to try to get to at least like level 12 to 13 to properly take on these quests. And I've heard some people say that it's possible to take these quests down even though they're much higher level than you. But I tried one of them and the turrets destroyed me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not that great at the game yet. Possibly, maybe. But I feel like the quest pacing feels very off. Like,
right.
Maybe
the balance.
I don't feel like I'm smoothly progressing through the game. It feels a tad janky in terms of level progression.
Sure. I mean, I think that's a fair criticism. I guess to me, like, I'm just taken aback by the aesthetic of the game and just like the general vibe of the game. I do think, like you said, like the balancing of the game itself, and that like it seems like it's like quite a leap, and it's really just pushing you to just grind. I guess, in a sense, is kind of off-putting, maybe, if to like the theming of the game, where it's like this very, I don't know, just it's got a very chill soundtrack that makes you just want to like sit on the couch and just kind of like just relax and play the game, right? So it's kind of like counterproductive, I guess, when you sit there and you're like, well, I got all the best stuff and I can't go forward. Like, this isn't very chill, I guess. So I guess from that perspective, I could see what you're saying. But I don't know. I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to these indie games. So
I will say it feels very unique. Some indie games kind of feel like generic and they're trying too hard to recreate something that's already been created. But I think CrossCode does a pretty good job. Like, it's not 100% perfect in that, but I think it does well enough to distinguish its own identity. And like I said, I do like where the story's going so far. I think this is some quality storytelling so far. And I actually really enjoy the excuse for the main character being a silent protagonist, and they poke fun around a lot in the game, and it's pretty funny. It's that your chat functions were broken when your character was converted over. So slowly over the course of the game, you're
relearning how to
the programmer who is helping you throughout your journey is slowly giving you new words. Like right now, my character can say her own name, Lee. Mm-hmm. And she can say hi and bye. So when characters are talking to her, she's like, "Hi, Lee, bye." And I thought it was pretty funny. And I think that was, like, you don't usually see something like that. And it was a really clever way of establishing a silent protagonist for your game.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's some well-received humor, too. A lot of times, especially, I would classify this as a JRPG-styled game, right? A lot of times the humor kind of is... it doesn't really hit the full audience, but I think in this game it does a pretty good job of being hitting that good quality spot for humor that you would find for everyone. So I don't know, I like it. I think it's worth the money. I mean, it's $16.99 right now on Steam. I think when it goes off sale it'll be like $20, but I can't see this game not coming to the Switch, to be honest.
Yeah, so far I think it's worth it. Yeah, I'm with you. I think this game will inevitably be on the Switch. The Switch is just too much of a indie powerhouse in its own right now for developers to pass up. Like, even the guy who made A Hat in Time said that, like, well, no plans to put onto the Switch. I do not want to do that. And, like, no joke, like 2 or 3 months later, it's like A Hat in Time announced for the Switch. It's like, all right, like, you know where the money's at.
It's like, well, once you write me a check that's ooh. Suddenly I'm like, maybe I should do this. Yeah. I've also been playing some more Dragon Quest XI. Still a great game. The only thing that's been irritating me, sometimes I get in story segments and I cannot find a save point. And and I get like screwed. Like, there was one evening where I had to be up early the next day, and like I got to a save point and I thought, like, I should really save right here and go to bed. But I was like, you know what? Why not? I'm gonna go like one more story segment and then I'm gonna save right after that, because I think there's
Dragon Quest fever.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a minor cutscene here, and then like I'm gonna save afterwards. Jesus Christ, this like the sequences of events that lasted like 30 minutes, maybe like 35. I was just like, I just want to go to bed. That's the only complaint I have about this game. Is like, dude, just let me save. It's 2018. Let me save wherever I want. I know it's very nostalgic to have me go up to like a church or a statue or whatever, but I just want to save wherever I want. That's all I want to do. I know there's an autosave, but
the trade-off is that you don't lose your save if you die to a boss or enemies. What happens is you go back to a church and you lose half your gold,
which is hefty too.
It is hefty, but you can put your gold in the bank.
Right.
So if you're not planning on buying anything, you can put it in the bank and then go off into the dangerous area all you want. But I don't think you're going to miss that 1,000 gold you get from it going in there. But Yeah, I will say Dragon Quest XI has a lot more save points before, because the only way to save back then was just the church itself.
Mm-hmm.
But
unless you play it on an emulator.
Yeah, unless you play an emulator. But officially, these goddess statues that are lingering about in the game, like at campsites and certain dungeons, have not been a thing in Dragon Quest till now. So they've been actually a lot more lenient on casual players.
Yeah.
In terms of this, I understand the idea of wanting to save anywhere you want, or maybe at least like a temp save.
Well, I think
you can turn the console off.
At the very least, because I realize the like strategic element to it, right? Like, no, you got to prepare for this dungeon. Like, you can't just like go in and reset your game every 5 seconds until you get whatever you want. But man, like for players like me, like during the weekday, like I'm like, man, I got to go to bed. So just being able to like just like maybe like you said, like a quick save, I can go to bed and I can come back the next day and just start off where I left off. I think that would be a really good feature.
Yeah, that would have been a fair compromise. Like the delete immediately deletes itself as soon as
you load it back up.
So you can't reuse it if you die to a boss or something.
Right, or you can't like just do it at a casino or something and just keep resetting the game. Yeah.
Send your feedback. Maybe it'll happen in Dragon Quest 12.
Maybe. But anyways, let's get on to our first topic. Quite a big topic. We're glad to be able to talk about this. But the PlayStation 1, I call it the PS1, but they're just calling it the PlayStation Classic, was announced recently this past week. And we all thought it was coming. We actually talked about this in late May. There was an article that came out that people were speculating the announcement was going to be coming. Did not realize it was going to be coming so soon. But it came out and they announced 5 games. Specifically, let me see here. Obviously, we have Final Fantasy VII, which everyone expects that game to be there. Ridge Racer Type 4, Tekken 3, Wild Arms, and Jumping Flash. It's supposed to be 15 more games. The price point's $100 for the 24th anniversary of the PlayStation. And one of the big things that people are talking about is the 2 controllers that are included are non-analog, so they don't have the analog stick, so it's not a DualShock controller. And apparently it's not going to be online capable.
They're not lying when they say classic.
Yeah, so I have some thoughts with this, and I'm interested to see what you have too, because we haven't really talked about this too much aside from this podcast, so I'm not quite sure where you stand on this. But basically, like, I think it's kind of odd they're not going with the analog sticks, but I think that comes down to the pricing of the game, of the console, because $100 is very well placed. Because if you look at the SNES Classic, I think that was like $70 or $80. So if an N64 Classic were to come out, it would have to be probably at that $100 range. So I think $100 for one of these things is about as much as they can get away with. I'm kind of curious what they're going to do for games. Mainly, I want to know, are these games going to be HD enhanced or upscaled, or is it just going to look like crap on my HD TV? I know that it's going to have an HDMI cable, but that doesn't really mean that the game's going to look that great. I'm also kind of curious, like, will this thing have like rated M games? Because if it is, then kids are going to have to be 17 to buy the console. So, like, you might be missing a lot of games, that we want to see. And then the only other thing I can think of is just, like, given the size of PlayStation 1 games, because the PlayStation 1, like, people were like, Final Fantasy 8 was like 4 freaking discs, or Legend of Dragoon was like 4 discs.
Final Fantasy 8 and 9 in particular were like 2 to 2.5 gig together if you combine all the discs.
So, yeah, you're looking at, like, how much storage capacity is this thing going to have? And we already have Final Fantasy VII, which is a fairly long or big game. And then Wild Arms is a fairly big game. I'm afraid that they're going to have a bunch of trash games on this thing that I'm not going to want to play, right? Because I can't, like, we can go through in a bit and say, like, what games we'd want to be on there maybe. But, like, I'm telling you, all the games that I would want, like, the hard drive on this thing is going to be massive. And when I think about an N64 Classic, that's one thing that the 64 and Nintendo 64 has going for it, is because it was cartridge base. those games are going to be a smaller file size. So I think you're going to be able to get more games on that thing.
Well, a couple of things about the PlayStation Classic. I think it is potentially a great item to buy, but a couple things I find interesting is that, well, first off, they don't have the DualShock analog controllers,
which is odd.
It's very odd because it was like a definite improvement over the controller. And I had that classic PlayStation controller, and the D-pad feels fine, but I feel like it may potentially limit what kind of library you can have on there. Now, I'm not entirely sure if there's any PlayStation games that you're required to have the analog. I think they built these games in the mindset that not everyone may have an analog controller.
Yeah, I looked this up real quick, but I'll let you continue. But I looked it up because I kept seeing everyone talking about, like Ape Escape, which I never knew there was such great demand for Ape Escape. But apparently, yeah, it was a good game back in the day. But that's the only game that I could find that actually legitimately, like, you cannot play without the analog stick. Now, like I think you're going to probably bring up is a lot of games gave the option to use the analog sticks, and it was tremendously better experience because of it. So, I mean, you're like if you're, who wants to play games without the analog stick? Certain games is okay. Like maybe Final Fantasy VII is fine, but like I'm not going to play Ridge Racer 4 without an analog stick.
Now, I can confirm the 5 games they announced you can definitely play on a D-pad, no problem, because the analog wasn't out yet when Final Fantasy VII came out.
Yeah.
So it's initially built for the D-pad, and I think in the later releases of Final Fantasy VII, I think like the greatest hits version, you can activate analog.
Well, I'm just looking
a certain way. I'm not. I don't remember on top of my head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have Ridge Racer Type 4, which is a racing game. I wouldn't want to play that with a D-pad.
Yeah, and when you asked about how they would set it up on here, I think it's probably going to be similar to PS TV and PS3 emulation. I think it'll have the standard 4:3, and then the option maybe to make it full screen or like stretch the filter or something like that. I'm not sure if they'll give it the full HD treatment. I'll applaud it if it does, but I don't think they took the time to go back and do certain features of this. Like I said, it's possible they may, but it doesn't seem like that. And in terms of the game library, so far they have a solid lineup, and the remaining 15 games could potentially be other great games also. I don't think they'll put too many big RPGs like Final Fantasy VII, and I do see maybe like Legend of Dragoon coming in, games like that. I think they're trying to get as many publisher titles in there as possible, not just like throw a whole bunch of Square Enix games in there. I think they're getting like the more prominent games from these developers. Final Fantasy VII's the biggest of the 3 Final Fantasies. Now, in terms of size, games like Final Fantasy are a huge exception of their size, but a lot of games for PlayStation 1 are like 70 to 200 megabytes, depending. So it's possible. I mean, there are certainly games that are bigger and smaller than that, but depending on the lineup, they could potentially fit it in a 32 to 64 gigabyte card that they put in there. So it's certainly possible to do that with the 20 games. So
yeah,
I'm sure they did that to be cost efficient too. I think that's mostly what I have to say about it. I kind of have to wait to see what the other 15 games are to determine if it's truly worth the $100.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the games are going to be tailored to each region I saw that it releases in. So like the Japanese one is going to be different than the one that comes out in North America.
Oh yeah, I think Nintendo did a similar thing.
Oh really? So yeah, that's kind of interesting that they're kind of tailoring it to the audience. It makes sense. But I'm kind of just, like you said, curious to see what games are going to come out on it. I mean, I saw somewhere that somebody brought up the M rating. There's probably not going to be any M rated games on this thing, which kind of bums me out because I feel like that's true. They don't want to limit the audience, and this wouldn't be a very good Christmas gift to buy a 10-year-old or something.
Well, don't forget that one of the reasons of Sony's existence and popularity is because they successfully managed to cater to adults.
But here's the problem with that.
Console.
You could buy a PlayStation as a kid, and your parents could keep you from buying M-rated games. But if you're going to buy a box that has 20 games pre-installed on it, unless it's got parental controls on it, like it's either you're giving little Timmy an M-rated game or you're not. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to be on the PlayStation.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure the rating pending would be there, like E to M. But a game like Resident Evil, like, just 100% deserves to be on that console.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It would be a shame if it wasn't. And so I'm kind of interested to see what happens with that. Honestly, I'm cheering them on. If they go for it and they say, you know what, we're gonna have an M rating on here. Sorry, but you have to be 17 to buy the console. Good, because anyone that enjoyed the PlayStation back in its heyday is old enough today to buy it.
I don't think Sony would do it, but you technically could put like a parental control feature on there that could be like,
yeah, that's what I was mentioning earlier.
Like what rated games are you allowed to play? But I doubt that would go through there. I doubt they did do something like that. But I mean, it's something you could possibly do if you wanted to make sure. But you would have to market that feature, which I don't think they would do that either.
Yeah. I thought their marketing for this thing though was kind of crazy in that like it came out to like the hand that was holding the PlayStation, and it was the exact same thing you saw for the Nintendo. I mean, like, and they literally called it the PlayStation Classic. They didn't even try to come up with like a different name. It's kind of funny that they were just like, nope, we all know that this is just like a straight copy, and we're not even going to be casual about it. Like, it's basically an SNES Classic ripoff, but
yeah,
it's PlayStation. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, everything looks good so far. I don't get why they didn't put analogs on the controller, but so far it looks like a decent package.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think why they may have not put analog sticks on the controller outside of trying to cut cost, and maybe they can sell analog sticks later or something that'll work, which will kind of irritate me, but whatever, is maybe they're going to come out with like the PlayStation Classic, and then they'll come out with like later the PS1 Classic, and it'll have some like later era games. So because the PlayStation catalog's huge, so maybe, like I said, they'll have like the PlayStation Classic, which is no analog sticks, and you're going to get a bunch of games that came out from like 94 or 95 to like 98, and then maybe you'll have the PS1 Classic that has like the second wave of PlayStation games, and that'll have the analog stick. I don't know. That's one thing I can think.
I can predict a few games that may be on there. I think Battle Arena Toshinden, Destruction Derby, and Wipeout are definitely games to be on there. If we're allowed to have mature title, then Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil are big contenders also.
Well, I think definitely. I think you're definitely going to see games like you're going to see a Crash Bandicoot on there. I think you'll see Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I would like to see like Xenogears on there. That would be sick. And I don't think that's unreasonable. But I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of games like Spyro and stuff like that. Unfortunately, because to me, the PlayStation's a big RPG machine. But one game I'm kind of skeptical about is, at least for me when I was a kid, all my friends at my school were playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 on the PlayStation. And I remember that was a big deal. It was a big game. And games like that, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that because there's so many songs in the game. And that might be a licensing issue.
Yeah, I think licensing will be the biggest issue of Tony Hawk ever potentially getting on there.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. I mean, if it's up to me, you'd have all the Final Fantasies on there. You'd have Vagrant Story on there. You'd have Star Ocean on there. I mean, but obviously this thing's you'd have tactics on there, but obviously this thing is not tailored for me. This is tailored for everybody. So I'm just curious to see what else they put on this thing.
Final Fantasy Tactics is definitely a possible one too.
Yeah, I can't see them doing more than 2 Final Fantasies max.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think 2 would be the max that they would do for this, because you might as well call it the Final Fantasy box if you start like throwing 7, 8, and 9 and Tactics and 7 and Chocobo Dungeon, Chocobo Racing.
I would buy it.
Oh, I'm sure it'd sell it, but it'd be weird to call it the PlayStation Classic.
Yeah, I've saw a few people, and I think we kind of slightly, I brought this up to you, and you kind of said 1 or 2 things, but I've seen a few people bring this up, and I think you did as well. As some people are like, man, like you can already play all these games on the PlayStation 3, or the place, with the PlayStation Classic store. So like it's not like that has an HDMI cable on it, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you can already play.
But it's kind of also like saying that you can just buy a Wii or a Wii U or a 3DS and download some of these games that are on there. This is more of like a novelty item. This is like, it's like a little nostalgia thing. I'm not like, I don't know the best way to put it. Like I said, it's just a tiny little cute item. I'm not sure if it's supposed to cater to the hardcore. It's supposed to cater to like the people who are nostalgic for this stuff, because that's kind of the intent with the NES Classic, was just to do that. But it kind of got like overblown, and everybody wanted one because it came from Nintendo, so of course people want it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing is for me, like I just want to know, like, are they doing anything to the games? Because there's other ways for me to play these games right now, that won't cost me $100. And the only problem with the other ways for me to play it is either it's a convenience issue, meaning like if I have to download it and like play it on emulator, that can be a pain. And I'm stuck to my computer, I can't really play it on my TV. Or the other option is to go spend $5 or $10 on the store and download one of these games, and it looks like crap on my TV because I have a 1080p TV. So I want to know, are they doing anything to these games to kind of make it look better? And if that's the case, then I'd be excited about this, because it's about convenience. Then all I have to do is plug it into my TV and play it. I don't have to do a bunch of crappy stuff, crazy stuff. I don't have to play with a bunch of settings on an emulator. I can just play it, And I think from that reason, it'll be cool. I do want to see a DualShock controller option as well, maybe like a $110 item or something. Then I would buy that.
Yeah, I mean, if this thing is successful, I mean, you bet they'll make a PS2 classic and put like Jak and Daxter and Final Fantasy X and stuff like that.
I think we're gonna have to wait for a PS2 classic for storage, because those games are getting big in size then, unless it goes an online route.
Maybe about the time where memory becomes more convenient.
Yeah. Well, I saw somebody online. It was really, really funny. But it's true. The way these classic gaming systems are coming out, we're kind of like reliving the 90s, because the NES Classic comes out, then SNES Classic comes out, then the PlayStation Classic comes out, and the N64 Classic, right, which we know is coming. But then technology isn't quite there yet for a PS2 Classic, but eventually we're going to get there, and it'll just keep following suit again. It's kind of funny how it's following the same sequence of events.
It'll be N64 versus PlayStation again.
Yeah, it's deja vu. How do you okay, basically some background real quick on this. Nintendo released an image that it was like a black and white image of an N64, I guess, and like a lot of people said, hey, like Nintendo did this before the SNES Classic was announced. So a lot of people are thinking the N64 Classic is ready to be announced, or it's around the corner. I don't know too much about whether or not that's an indicator that it's soon to be announced, but I definitely think it's coming, don't you?
Maybe.
You really think Nintendo might not do it?
I mean, it really depends. I mean, more than likely they will do it, but
dude, it's definitely happening.
Yeah,
in my book.
Yeah, it probably will happen. I'm just kind of thinking like they would have to remake the N64 controllers. So I ask myself, are they going to keep that really outdated analog on there, or are they going to actually like make a better controller for it? Because I mean,
I think they would say what they could do is say if you want a better controller, buy it on the Switch, and if they had those games available on the Switch, that would be a good option.
Yeah, I wish they had like peripherals to let you use something like the Wii controllers or something like that. That'd be really nice. But man, like the analog on that N64 controller feels so outdated. I actually bought GameCube sticks online that can fit on the N64, like custom made ones. And I took apart a few N64 controllers and I put those analogs in, and the controller feels 100% better.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I feel no nostalgia for that old analog. I love the N64. Man, I played Zelda Ocarina of Time, Star Fox 64, Mario 64. I mean, I love the hell out of that console, but I have no nostalgia for that controller. And like I hold one and I'm like, wow, like this thing is a lot smaller feeling than I remember. I'm reaching my hands around in it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like 25. I'm like 20 years older than the last time I really used one of these. I mean, it's a great console and has great games. Just wow.
Well, I mean, and I was looking at some of like online article that was saying like what games they'd want on the N64 Classic, and people were like, all these people in the comments were like, it has to have GoldenEye, it has to have GoldenEye. When's the last time anyone here has played GoldenEye on the N64?
Hey, I'm telling you, still a damn good time.
I don't know, dude. That game is not aged well at all.
Just don't use when you turn, it's a fun time.
When you turn, you have to completely turn like all the way to the left. You can't turn like a little bit. It's pretty crazy.
Well, it's for old farts like me and my friends, but it's still a good time. But we activate our inner 7 to 8 year olds and have a blast with it.
So well, and that's the thing. I think the N64 Classic and the PlayStation Classic, there's going to be certain games where people are going to realize like, ooh, these games have not aged well. And definitely in the realm of first-person shooters, I think technology has come a long way.
GoldenEye might be an iffy one because
the James Bond licensing.
Well, not the James Bond licensing. Rare made GoldenEye.
Mm-hmm.
And the GoldenEye / James Bond franchise is just, I'm not exactly sure who owns it right now. I think Activision were the last people to make a Bond related game. EA or Activision, one of the two. And licensing reason, it might be hard to get that on there.
Yeah.
But you'll definitely see something like Mario 64, Zelda 64, Donkey Kong 64, Star Fox 64.
I'm telling you, and you know what's crazy is, like, I think like this goes to show why Sony came. I'm telling you, this is gonna sound weird, but why Sony came out with that the non-DualShock controller to try to cut price, because they probably looked at Nintendo and thought they're definitely doing an N64 Classic. It's probably going to be around Christmas time, the same time we're doing our thing. Nintendo has so many great games that they themselves produced that like they can put a ton of games on there that like they don't have to pay a third party for, right? Like they own the game. They can put Mario games on there. They can put Zelda games. It doesn't matter because they own the game. I don't know if they would do that, but they could do that, and they could. Their profit margin is going to be a little higher, and plus the games are smaller, so like they don't have to invest as much into storage, so they can put more games. So I think we're going to see if and when this thing's announced, it's going to be interesting to see if Sony and Nintendo go back at a old school rivalry, or if they're just going to kind of let it go.
Yeah, I think the N64 is going to have a lot of prominent titles on it, but I think the trade-off on it will be likely there probably won't be as many. I think there might be 20 N64 games. I'm predicting 20 N64 games on the console. But
so
they all
the same as the PS1, the PlayStation Classic.
Yeah, but I think they'll all be bigger titles. I don't think it'll be just like some small shovelware games that one played. I think it'll be like actual legitimate titles.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, interesting. Let us know in the comments what you all think about this. I'm sure you all have lots of suggestions of games you might want to be on there, or even if you think this is a good idea, whether or not you're going to buy it. I know a couple of you out there have stated that you plan on buying the Atari VCS. So I would assume if you're going to buy the Atari VCS, you would buy the PlayStation Classic.
And just to let you all know, I've never bought the NES, SNES, and I probably don't plan on buying the PlayStation 1 either. That's mostly because I have my own. I have this. Still works perfectly fine. Yeah. Not plugged in, but it works fine. I've got my SNES and Nintendo over here also. Yeah. No, here too. On its Sunshine Glory.
There you go. Don't make them like they used to.
Yeah, that's a real way to play the classic, is to actually buy the thing and play it on an old TV.
Yeah. Well, you know what's crazy? And like, I don't want to sound like an old guy here, but like, dude, I've gone through like 4 PlayStation 2s just from like the disc drive or the laser going out. And like, I have a Super Nintendo and that thing's never had an issue with it.
Oh yeah, crazy. I'm the same. I used to have the old first PS2 and the disc drive went bad on it. Like, it was making a loud clicking noise. And I have the later model one, the smaller, thinner one. Mm-hmm. That one works fine. It's never gone.
See, I've gone through a couple of those too. So
I got it right here. See, like right here. I even made even put the custom thing on here, so I can play Japanese games on it. That's how I played the final mix of Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yeah,
was through this.
How much did that cost?
How much did it cost? The top? I did this like a long time ago, like 15 years, like almost 15 years, not 15, like, but whenever Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix came out, around that time. Probably $50 for everything.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it wasn't bad for the time. It was easy to do. You just got to clip off the.
I got you.
The old one, you put this in.
Yeah, I think like my first initial PS2 Slim, that actually lasted quite a while, but now I'm thinking about it. Once that one went out, I went, you have to, I had to buy them used. So if you go purchase used PS2s, they're going to go out at a faster rate because obviously, they're used. So that's the nature of the game. But anyways, we're getting off topic here.
It's just me trying to show off my stuff.
Yeah, well, we have a video for that. It's doing quite well, by the way.
I've updated a little bit since then, so that video's a tad outdated, but the walls are essentially the same, so...
Might have to do a part 2.
Yeah, maybe a part 2 when it's different enough.
All right, so moving on, though. This is a big topic. Nobuo Uematsu, he's kind of retiring. Basically, let me just read what his blog post was. That way, people that are listening, maybe you haven't seen this or have heard about this. So let me just do that. So he recently released this thing on his blog that said, "To my dearest fans, since the establishment of Dog Ear Records, I have found myself blessed with countless opportunities, from composing new works to holding concerts around the world. My days have been hectic yet fulfilling. The resulting fatigue, however, has finally caught up with me, and I find it mentally and physically difficult to go at my current pace. After giving serious consideration to all options, I've decided to take an extended leave of absence and give my mind and body the time they need to properly mend. If I am to return, I want to do it in full health. Do not worry, once I've made a full recovery, I'll be back doing what I do best. My current plan is to rest for the remainder of the year, and while I cannot commit to a method or a time frame for my return, I'm very hopeful. I deeply apologize for the burden this decision places both upon my fans and my clients, and hope that you can understand and support the path I have chosen. I thank you all for your continued support, and only ask that you are patient until I'm on my feet again." Nobuo Uematsu. So, he's 59 years old. I don't know. Initially, when I heard about this, I thought he was just kind of like sick or something like that. But it seems like the guy's just burnt out, which this is a bad time because recently we had the announcement or a leak that he was working on the Final Fantasy VII Remake in some capacity. A lot of people felt like he was going to be working on it in a very intense way, or like he was going to be the main composer for the game. But it seems to me now like if he's taking a break and he doesn't know how long it's going to be till he returns, he's not working on that game anymore. You know?
Yeah, maybe. Well, definitely get
unless
better.
he already wrote like a couple of tracks and then that was it. You know?
I mean, he's for a long time been going on a hectic schedule, even like working for Square, like before he like stopped officially working for Square. And you know, he's getting older. He's like you said, he's 59 now, and I'm sure he can't physically do as much as he could when he was like 40. And you know, I mean, it's not ragging on him or anything, but I mean, the older you get, the harder it is to take on things like a whole tour, like a concert tour, doing multiple games, um, you know, just working so much throughout the day and with a schedule like that. You know, it could get anyone sick, really, especially at that age. So I really think he should definitely rest up. He doesn't owe anyone a thing. He's given us enough. I mean, in my head, he can never give enough, but but realistically, he has. And if he ever decides to retire one day, I'll definitely salute him. I mean, he's brought some of the best gaming music ever.
Yeah, for sure.
Along with him, Koji Kondo, Koichi Sugiyama, Yoko Shimomura. I mean, I definitely find him the top dog.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything, but like I said, if he just decided to say, "Well, I retired," you know, I want to live the rest of my days, you know, in peace and having fun, then like, Godspeed, good sir.
Yeah, you know, it is interesting though, because I've always kind of been impressed by how much, or at least by his work ethic, right? Because especially in the late '90s, if you look at games like Final Fantasy VIII, and then Final Fantasy IX, those games were kind of being worked on at the same time, basically. And I read somewhere for the development history of Final Fantasy IX that it was suggested to him that because he's working on the Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack, that they either bring in another composer for Final Fantasy IX, and he refused. He's like, no, I can do them both. And then they're like, well, how about for Final Fantasy IX, we have a co-composer, and you can kind of like oversee some of the other songs. And he flat out refused, and he said, no, I'm doing the whole game. So this guy did all the Final Fantasy VIII, and then he did all of Final Fantasy IX, like pretty much back to back. And Final Fantasy IX is 158 tracks. It's a mammoth soundtrack.
And the best one.
Yeah, the best one. And then like after that, like you can kind of see like after that he got into Final Fantasy X and he was just like, all right, I'll take a co-composer.
Yeah, and he didn't do much on FF11 either. And he only did 2 tracks, I think, for 12.
Yeah, so I mean, he's like clearly, I think that like kind of peaked. Like he was like, okay, like I'm putting like everything I got into this, and then he's like, okay, I'm tired.
And the original 14 1.0, he did the entire soundtrack.
Yeah,
and I will say the best part of Final Fantasy 14 1.0 was the soundtrack. So good job,
Nobuo.
Good job, Nobuo.
Yeah. I know a lot of the news articles surrounding this are just saying like, oh, like he's, what does this mean for the Final Fantasy VII remake? I mean, look, aside from the Final Fantasy VII remake, I think that, like you said, the guy is a legend. If he wants to take a break for a while, he feels like he needs a break. I don't think he should like outdo himself or like put his health into question to continue making music. I mean, I'm sure he's got some grandkids and stuff at this point. Like he might want to just kind of chill at this point. You know, he's had a crazy career.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him to step all back into it either when he's in full health. Maybe just stick to smaller stuff and work your way back.
Well, how old is that composer that does Dragon Quest?
He's in his 80s, I think.
Yeah, look at that guy. He's still like.
In all fairness, Sugiyama is doing one game series.
That's true.
Mostly.
That's true. Yeah,
he does like orchestrated concerts and stuff also, but I think he's mostly. I don't remember his other works, but Dragon Quest is like the one he prominently does.
I think what Nobuo, and like I can't sit here and give Nobuo advice. Nobuo knows better. But if I were to give like my thoughts on this, I think what he should do is exactly what he's doing. Take a break, go on some vacations, travel the world. But when he comes back, he needs to take a more like John Williams point of view where it's like, okay, I'm established. I'm one of the greatest composers alive, at least in my genre or my field, right? Which Nobuo would be video game music. I'm gonna pick and choose, which I'm not saying he hasn't before, but like he really needs to pick and choose and only pick projects he's really passionate about. You know, even if he wants to go on some like some smaller projects that like something he feels inspired by. I think he's gotten to that point where it's like he doesn't have to do something unless he actually wants to do it, and like I think that's okay. I mean, you know, so if does he want to do the Final Fantasy VII remake? I mean, we saw old interviews with him from 2 or 3 years ago where he was asked about it, and he said, honestly, I don't want to do the Final Fantasy VII remake because I don't want to rewrite 50 or 60 songs that I already wrote. Now, obviously, this would be expanded. There'd be new songs because it's more longer gameplay and everything. But I mean, that general premise, he's like, I've already done that. I'd rather do something new. But recently it was announced that they somehow got him on board. I don't know if they just offered him a bunch of money. He was working at the same time on the Bra Bra concerts. So, you know, he was going and appearing on stage with Katase, which is strange because he's the producer of the Final Fantasy VII remake. Why does Katase care about these concerts? And why are you releasing Final Fantasy VII compilation albums all of a sudden? You know, like obviously he was thinking about it. He was kind of toying with it. But I honestly, what I take away from this is, aside from what I already said about Nobuo and his health, is just I don't think he's working on this game anymore, and that's fine. But I do think that's pretty certain. Like I don't think he's doing any more music for it.
I don't think we ever got really much detail on how involved he was.
Sure.
If anything, he may have just been a special consultant. And like someone else may have been redoing the soundtracks.
Let me rephrase what I said. I think this kind of confirms that he's not doing it to the extent that some people would have hoped.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, like I said, there are very worthy successors to him for the Final Fantasy series. Despite my criticism of 15's soundtrack, which I blame more in the sound direction than the composer herself, because Yoko Shimomura makes amazing soundtracks like Super Mario RPG, Kingdom Hearts. I mean, just fantastic across the board.
She oversaw Xenoblade Chronicles and wrote a lot of that music as well.
Yes, and Xenoblade. I think she's more than a worthy successor to carry on the Final Fantasy series soundtracks. I just wish that she is allowed to be more expressive, more free in what she wants to do, and you know, the game set up where it's like I'm mixing up my words here, but I just want it like Final Fantasy 16 if she does it again. I just want it to be to the point that she's very inspired to make these top-notch, amazing soundtracks like she has before.
Yeah, well, if you look at other music mediums, right? So let's say like a famous band, like what does the producer always do? They take the band to some far secluded area to record. The studio is also always like very inspiring, and there's some crazy art on the wall and places for like the band to unwind because they want them to feel inspired. If you look at movie soundtracks, Howard Shore, he composed the music for Lord of the Rings. He said he didn't listen to anything at all for like an entire year while he was writing Lord of the Rings music because he just wanted to be immersed in that world. And like you can only do that for so long. And Final Fantasy 15, that game was in development for like 10 years. Some of those songs were written 10 years ago, you know? So it's kind of hard to feel inspired for that long. So, and like you said, we've seen work that she's done in the past where it's been like top notch. So I agree with you. I think that if she did return for 16, I think she could do some good stuff, but they need to give her a chance to be inspired by it. Show her a clear enough vision for the game and then let her write the music and then that be it. Like, let's not drag this out. And you know, it's hard to feel inspired for that long, especially when you keep changing what the game's about. And you know, it's difficult.
Yeah, and like I think most of the fault lies in 15's open world, because there are like in like emotional scenes or like moments where you're supposed to feel intense or sad or something. I think the Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack does well in that. But like when you're going to the open world or going to the gas station, which I don't think she even did the gas station theme. I think someone else actually did that. But it's like boring, generic feeling stuff like that. But like the theme when you're fighting Leviathan in that game, it's like that is like emotionally gripping.
It's
Feeling.
intense, man.
Yeah, it's like you wanna beat down on that Leviathan. And speaking of beat downs, you want to just go ahead and jump to our next
Let's do it,
topic
man.
since we're kind of going off already.
Yeah, I was thinking
our
that
main
myself.
man Tabata.
Our favorite pinata.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. So recently Tabata did a interview with, I think it was Polygon anyways, that's where I'm on.
Yeah, I think it's Polygon.
He was talking about the Final Fantasy 15 development history and basically kind of giving his thoughts on like what he thinks about the game now. It's fairly long, but I think the best way for us to go through this, and kind of I think the most entertaining way, would be if we go through it in segments and then just give our thoughts as it comes to us. I think that's the best way because there's a lot of stuff there, but a lot of it's really, really good. So I'll go through this first couple paragraphs and then we can just stop and we'll take it as we see it. So he starts off by saying during the course of the development and release of Final Fantasy 15, it's not like everything was thoroughly written in stone compared to what we're going to be doing in the future. With a lot of it, we were playing by ear and there were a lot of things that we learned from there. We also realized there were a lot of shortcomings on our side. He feels the future looks bright for Luminous Productions precisely because of the difficult course he and his team have already navigated. Stop me whenever you want to say something. But first, there's all that unfinished business with 15 to take care of. Initially, 2017's DLC episode Ignis was supposed to be the finale, Tabata says. The end of Final Fantasy 15, however, just because we planned it out that way doesn't mean that was the right way to do it. There's still this kind of connection between us and the users, so why not try to create something new based on that need? That's what we want to do with the next DLCs. Create an active relationship with the users. We want to thoroughly secure the story in places where people think there are some pieces missing in the puzzle. We want to alleviate those issues. At the same time, we want to build something new with the users, create a different sort of possibility with the direction that the story of Final Fantasy 15 could head. That's something that's going to be new, and it's going to be pretty exciting to make. The next DLC will be a brand new story, he says. Last year's DLC was already initially planned from the main game, Ignis Gladiolus and all that. That was Season 1. This will be kind of like moving into Season 2. And then after this, they kind of go into the development of Final Fantasy 15. But this was kind of like Tabata talking about kind of going forward with the game. I thought it was interesting that he acknowledged that there were some shortcomings with the game. But go ahead.
I will say this about the man. He despite some rocky wordplay that he used like when the game first came out, at this point now he's owning up to it. He's owning up to the fact that a lot of the game feels missing. It feels incomplete. There were answers not answered. The pacing was just like way off. And I do appreciate the fact that he owns up to it. I mean, it's obvious as day. It's like it's so hard to not see how incomplete the base product is. And the season 1 episodes did help a little bit, but all they did was fill in those obvious blank spots that were there. Yeah, like when Gladiolus left the group randomly for a certain amount of time, we knew. Almost everyone knew that was going to be the DLC where he walked off to.
I think everyone knew.
And for Prompto, when he got off the train, we're like, oh, that's when he starts his DLC.
Yeah.
And Ignis was a little more.
Well, kind of. We assumed we were going to figure out what happened to him, right?
Yeah, we were going to find out why he went.
But we didn't know. Yeah, we didn't know the circumstances.
Yeah, we didn't know the circumstances to it. These new episodes feel like they're actually going to dive into characters I don't think we got enough of. Like we want with episode Arden, we're going to see more about that character, try to understand more his perspective of things, because we didn't really get much of a chance to do that with episode Arden, and I think this DLC might justify him and his actions, and you may actually end up feeling sorry for him, or you may hate him more, but at the end of the day you know more about him. We didn't get to do much with Ariana. I'm glad she's getting her own story. Luna Freya's getting her own story. Luna Freya, it just like, it was a crime how underused she was in 15.
Yeah.
An absolute crime. And giving her more of a spotlight, potentially being able to see more of Tenebrae, I think that's something that's a must. Tenebrae was teased to us so much and we never went there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of odd that we're getting an episode Noctis, because the base Final Fantasy 15 is essentially episode Noctis, but maybe it'll dive more into the time between the last third of the game and where he was in between then of the Act 2 and Act 3.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm just gonna kind of voice your same opinions. I mean, it's the game had a lot of issues. I can speak a lot of good things about Tabata, and I like him as a person. And I do like that he's able to like acknowledge errors and at least try to fix them. But the thing is, the way he fixes things, like I'm not always a big fan of. And you know, in this circumstance, we are getting a season 2 of Final Fantasy 15. He said to kind of try to fill those holes where people were still feeling like the story lacked the cohesion that they wanted. But he also says, I think later in this interview, and we can go back to some of the development history, some interesting stuff, but he says like these season 2 is going to be like an alternate reality. Like these are events that didn't actually occur. And like, I'm like, well, then you're not alleviating the plot holes.
Wait,
like, yeah. So a lot of these things are going to be like story events that like never, like, it's going to be like an alternate timeline type deal. Because we're going to see Luna Freya and Noctis.
Wait, can you read exactly where he says that?
Yeah, let me find it.
Because that is just absurd if he does that.
Yeah, so let me try to find this here. While I'm trying to find it, do you want to keep talking?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's the thing with Tabata is that, like you said, I'm sure he's a good person, and I think he means well and has good intention with what he does. But his original ideas of having like, oh, have it alter Noctis's perspective. How would it be realistic if you found out the death of someone? You would find out through a newspaper or on TV, and it's like, yeah, but this is a fantasy realm. Like, you want dramatic stuff to happen. You want to feel engaged with the story. Like, you don't want to find out through a newspaper in a fantasy story that, you know, your father died. It's like, yeah, or at least you get a phone call from like Core or something, and like him just like, can you meet me somewhere? And like he'll be like, I have bad news for you. Your father fell, or something like that. That would have been more acceptable than, I heard it on the news that my daddy died. And going back to the main point with Tabata, is that his original vision, how did the higher ups at Square Enix not throw so many red flags? Like, don't do that. Do not do that. Do not do that. We still need to pick up our crap from what happened at the original 14. It's like, make a game you know people will like. Don't stray too far off the path. This is like, this way of storytelling is just way off the what people are used to.
Sure.
And I understand that things need to evolve and storylines need to evolve with it. But this was not like an evolution. It was more like,
so
it was like an interesting, unique take on, like, not something that felt like it moved forward, but like something where I was trying to give like a different kind of perspective, which I don't think sits well with the Final Fantasy series. It's like they try to treat it. It feels like they're treating it more like a TV show in a bad way.
Yeah. I've seen it. I found the quote right here, but I've seen it listed elsewhere also prior to this article that basically episode Arden is going to be definitely canon to the main game. But the other side stories are going to be like a more alternate, like sequence of events. But basically right here, he says, at the same time, we want to build something new with the users, create a different sort of possibility with the direction that the story of Final Fantasy 15 could head. So, I mean, that's kind of to me telling me that like it's going to be alternate reality. I've seen other stuff before this that like the at least episode Noctis is definitely going to be like an alternate reality type thing, like a kind of like where episode Ignis you could choose between do you help Arden or not, and like if you do, you'd have a completely different ending. It would be another kind of thing like that. It's not going to be, there's nowhere for you to fill in with Noctis aside from spoilers when he's asleep, right? Maybe they could do something along that lines, but
I'm calling it now. It's going to be a happy ending. It's going to be a happy ending version.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen some concept art, and it's got like Arden and Luna and Noctis. They're all having like a picnic together and like laughing, like like it seems like a happy ending to me.
I don't know. Like I said, when the game comes out complete,
yeah,
I'll play through it again.
Well, he gives some like really interesting and candid responses here to the development of the history. Let me read some of that, and then before we go any deeper, because it's pretty interesting. So the game says, in short, the game shipped, but not without compromises. And let me turn the screen on. And enthusiasts who had followed every crumb of pre-release information on the Versus 13 project didn't hold back when it came to expressing their frustration at the radical cuts and changes inflicted on the final work. Even 15's most diehard supporters generally agreed that its story felt incomplete, even after its post-launch updates. Tabata shares their opinion, and he hopes to put things right with everyone who has supported the game. And this is in quotes. I think you're aware of the aims of why I did it this way, he muses. We showed everything through the perspective of Noctis, so that players would become more immersed with his emotions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yeah. Keep going.
He said things like hearing the news of the invasion via radio or learning of other big events through the newspaper. That's the sort of thing that happens in real life. So it felt believable for the player to actually get this big news from outside sources. Those were, I think, the merits, the advantages of handling the storytelling in such a way. However, Tabata pauses before continuing. I guess one thing I realized after the release and listening to the feedback of everybody who played Final Fantasy 15 was that you couldn't grasp the entire story at times. The previous Final Fantasies were much simpler, and that the player could more easily understand the entire story of each game.
Yeah, a good story should be.
This was an approach that I took of my own volition. Let's try something different and not make the story so... Why would you try something different?
Like, how about we try this, guys? Instead of making a good, structured story, why don't we make a terrible one that is, like, all over the place through DLC, movies, other games, animes, and let's make people watch all this crap just to get one story in.
Yeah.
One single story, not like a series of stories, like a branching sequel narrative like Kingdom Hearts. No, let's take one story right here and just throw everything outside. This is great storytelling, everyone. I swear, it's how it's going to be done in the future.
Yeah, he literally says, "Let's try something different and not make the story so compact and understandable." What?
Oh my God. Tabata,
oh my God.
Come on, man. Oh, so people thought that Nomura went crazy when he said that FF15 should be a musical. Are you hearing what's coming out of this guy's mouth right now?
This is just crazy. I don't know. He did say, unfortunately, that didn't work to our advantage, so it's an area that we have a lot of room for growth with regarding the storytelling. It's something we're definitely going to improve on in the future, without question. I mean, and later, I don't know, he goes on to say stuff like originally they're planning on having each player, you're going to play the game through each person character, and like it was going to be like their own experience, but he felt like that was going to be way too long. I don't know. Tabata's a good guy, but when he's talking about like, oh, we want it to be more realistic and tell through Noctis's perspective, that's interesting. And there's games where you told through the main character's perspective. Final Fantasy X, for example, it says this is my story, and it's mainly told from his perspective. But they planned it from the ground up like that. When I look at Final Fantasy 15, you didn't plan it like that, Tabata. You freaking like it feels like we learned about these events from the radio because you didn't want to make that scene. Like you didn't have enough time. Like or something, like you spent too much time trying to make the car fly or something. Like you didn't have enough resources to make that beginning sequence. Like it feels like that was cut out. Like I didn't learn it from the newspaper because you were trying to be like crazy and innovative. I learned it from the newspaper because you were trying to cut costs. That's what it feels like.
Well, he says that it's from Noctis's perspective. The problem with the story is the narrative itself is not built centered around Noctis. Well, we played Dragon Quest XI recently, and look how the story structure is on there. You are the hero almost the entire time, and very, very rarely are you ever not from the perspective of the hero of that story.
Yeah.
But the narrative and how the story structure is built is to cater to what the hero experiences on his journey.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, like, it's not even really doing that because you still have the scenes from like when the Empire are talking to each other and small scenes like that.
Well, and here's the yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of what there's scenes where he's not in the scene, so that doesn't make any sense. But also like quality storytelling, like if you wanted to tell it from Noctis's perspective, then you should not have events that are more interesting going on where Noctis is not there, right? Like
right.
Noctis... you wrote the story, so if you want it from Noctis's perspective, he should be present at all the events that are the most interesting to hear about. If freaking Insomnia fell, I would not want to be like, oh, like what happened to that guy when he found out about it at the cafe? Like, no, I would want to see the city falling, and I would want to see like what happened. Like,
Yeah, like Noctis needed to be in Insomnia in the beginning. That needed to, like, Kingsglaive should have been Noctis. That story should have been altered to cater to Noctis, and would have been motivation to go out on the road, to go see Luna Freya, and pick up the collection of toys to become the next king and stuff like that. And we needed the ability to enter and walk around in the Empire. Noctis needed to meet the Emperor of the Empire. Noctis needed to meet these characters. Noctis never meets the Professor. He never meets the Emperor. He never meets like these important established characters that are supposed to help guide Noctis through his journey for better or worse. To get him to the next point of the story. And these characters are not utilized for that.
Well, it's like everything that's fascinating and interesting about the story, Noctis is not there for. Like we're like out in the hills and stuff, and like all this other crazy stuff is going on. We don't meet anybody from Insomnia. We don't get attached to that city. When you return to it, we don't really care because you never saw it in the first place. Like I don't know anyone that lived there besides the 3 people that lived. Like I've been traveling around with me. Like nothing that like was interesting besides the Leviathan stuff. Like that was cool, but I don't know. So anyways, like we can go on and on about this game, but like it has some serious issues. And like it's kind of disturbing sometimes.
It's more the reason. Like I said, Tabata's probably a very nice guy, and I wouldn't be mean to him or anything if I was having dinner with him or something of the rather. I would just I would talk to him casually and everything. But oh man, just please don't. Like I'm so glad he's not working on Final Fantasy 16. I am so glad. After the stuff he said in this interview, I am so glad he's not doing it. I'm sure he's learned from a couple of mistakes, but I would want to keep him far away from it. Let him have fun with this Luminous studio.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if. Yeah, I was just thinking like if like you and me both walked into like a bar and like we were like, you had a story and I had a story, and your story was, hey guys, I was there when New York City fell, and my story was, I was at the grocery store when it fell. Like, who would you be more interested in hearing the story from? You know?
Oh yeah, I was on the crapper when I heard about that.
Yeah, I read about it in the newspaper, and like, no, you wouldn't be like, oh really? Tell me more about that. You'd be like, no, I want to hear about the guy that was there when like all the crazy stuff was going on. You know, so
yeah, I felt no real personal attachment to anyone in that game.
Yeah, but I'm a Final Fantasy fan. I'll pick up all the DLCs and I'll play the Windows version, and I'll go through the whole game with. I've played the game again recently. Not recently, actually, it's been like a year now. With at least the main DLCs in it, and it was a better game with like the core Gladio, Ignis, and Prompto. It was more enjoyable with those games in there. I hope they actually insert it into the game. I don't know if they've done that yet, but yeah, we'll have to see with maybe some of this other stuff, and maybe it'll be what everyone wants it to be, maybe not. But
I'll play the Super Royal Edition when it comes out in 2020.
Yeah, me too.
There you
go. But anyways, we got a little bit more here, so let's kind of move on so we're not talking all night here. So Leanne, she asks basically, well, I can read her full comment here because I think she gives some context. Well, first off, she liked last week how I described Uncharted, where I said the game where you climb and collect stuff. She said she couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, hello to every video game, almost every video game platformer ever.
I felt like that was a great description of Uncharted, but anyways,
she said like that Indiana Jones like game. Oh, Uncharted.
Yeah, I think honestly in that moment I would have been, you know, that movie where they go and find treasure. You would have been like, oh god,
DuckTales.
National Treasure. Anyways, so she initially calls me you, but then she corrects herself. But she said she really enjoyed our past episode because she's been sick. Hope you got better. But anyways, she said she moved her PS4 from the living room into her bedroom, and while she's enjoying Spider-Man, most of the time she's been spent with Dragon Quest XI. She's loving this game a lot more than she thought she would, even though she's still very early in the game. She's also made a decent dent into Torna the Golden Country. That's a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 DLC. Though she doesn't like Mithra in this game so far. She's a constant downer, and she just wants to kick her out of her team. Going back to Dragon Quest XI, Jade is quickly becoming a favorite of hers, and she loves everything about her. What are some characters you are liking or disliking from this month's RPG offering, and why? I'm assuming she's talking strictly about Dragon Quest XI.
Dragon Quest XI was my big RPG of the month, so it's really going to be mostly that.
Yeah. So what are some characters you were liking and disliking from Dragon Quest XI? Or you finished the game, so which characters did you enjoy the most?
I like all of them. Like the ones, the ones that I may not like are just like not a significant part of the story.
Yeah.
Like the thing I love about Dragon Quest so much is that it has like charming, simple characters. Like they're not too deep that like you have to psychologically study their character or anything. Like no, it's like they're very simple stories, very simple to follow. And you know, maybe if I had to criticize one character, truly it may be the character Jasper. That I can't really say without spoiling it, but without spoiling it, he does have a rivalry. A rivalry with Hendrik, the fellow commander of Heliodor. And they have a rivalry with each other, and that story is explored to an extent in the game. But I mean, I haven't beaten the post game yet, so there is always potential for like some side quest or some main quest post game point to dive more into it. We do get some of it, and they do like a decent amount to explain about the relationship. it just didn't feel very conclusive, I would say,
in
some manner. And so maybe like I'm fine with the character Jasper himself. Maybe I just didn't care too much about how they used him.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard for me to comment on that. I mean, I haven't beaten the game yet, but I mean, I didn't really mind so much. But I mean, for me personally, I mean, I think the character that's kind of like I'm kind of in the middle on is Sylvandio.
Which one?
I'm sorry.
Sylvando,
my bad. That guy, like I like sometimes I like him, and sometimes I'm like, dude, this guy's just too intense.
You can't help but love him. He's so delightful. How often? I mean, there have been funny, charming, like over the top characters in RPGs for sure, but how often do you really get that nowadays? And Sylvando is he's just so ridiculously adorable.
Yeah. I mean, like there's times when I really like him and like I like his character, and he's like very like he's very like I think one of the times like I really kind of started to like him was kind of early in the game where he kind of saves the prince or whatever. He comes down with the sword. I'm like, oh man, this guy's a beast. Like I was like, this is actually like a cool character. He's got some mystery behind him. But I mean, most of the time, like when he's talking, I'm like, dude, it's just a tad too much, man. Just like kind of like let's roll it back just a little bit. And like I almost feel like if I kind of wonder if I played this game without the voice acting, right? Like the Japanese version got, and I only read the dialogue. That's not what I would have thought he would have sounded like. I would have thought he was like a ladies' man and like he's a very smooth talker. But then when I hear his voice, I'm like, he's very feminine, which is fine. But I think they go to me sometimes. Some of the scenes they go a little bit too much for me, from my taste, with that character. But I kind of he makes me laugh more than not. So
yeah, he's a good comedic relief for the group. And what I like most about him, he's not like a bumbling idiot type of comedic relief. He's the like he knows how to make he knows how to be the more lighthearted person of a situation. He always spins things in the more positive manner when everyone's kind of a downer. So I think he's really awesome in that regard, and I think that's comedic relief done very well. That he's still confident, he's skillful, he's a very useful member to the party.
Yeah, I mean, he's growing on me. I mean, I'm starting to get used to him. I think the only other character that like I actually like, that I didn't think I was gonna like, which is surprising, is Veronica.
I'm the same with you on that.
I didn't think I was gonna like the like kid character, but whoever does her voice acting is like freaking awesome. And her like dialogue is always like really entertaining, and it's really well written, and it's like I don't know, I enjoy it. I enjoyed her story. Like okay, like well, I don't want to spoil it, but I mean I enjoy most scenes with her. It's they're good scenes, so I like that character a lot.
Yeah, the game has just an overall very charming and colorful cast of characters.
Yeah, for sure. Just for time's sake, let's keep going on here. Then we had what was his name? I think it was Kanpan. Let me double check here. I don't want to be naming the wrong people here. Yep. So I think Pan is abbreviated. So Kanpan. I'm saying your name wrong, and you'll have to tell me your full name in the future. So he wants us to name our top 5 or 10 favorite JRPG franchises. We're just gonna stick with top 5 because that would be intense to go top 10 favorite JRPG franchises, not favorite JRPGs, JRPG franchises. Eric, we put some restrictions on this. Do you want to kind of fill them in on?
Yeah, the restrictions are mostly games that have a pretty decent sized library of games, not like 1 off or 2 off games. Like, I mean, as much as I love Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross, there really just only been 2 games from the series, and it's not like Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy where they have like mega franchises and spin-offs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we're trying to we're kind of like the bigger picture franchise, like
so I think
that are well established and still being like made today
Yeah, I think where we drew the line was like, okay, if there was 2 games, we're not going to call it a franchise, but if there's 3 games, like, okay, we'll accept it. But we're not crazy about it, but we'll take it, right? Um, so, uh, the way I looked at this was I kind of said like, okay, which series have consistently impressed me? Because generally speaking, I'm not like a franchise person. Like I don't like I'll play games that I like, and then if I don't like a game in the franchise, like I will not play that game. I'm not like a like let's start here and let's go to here. So I've picked series that like have consistently impressed me, and I think that's fair. But I guess we can just name each other's number one. So, what's your number one, Eric?
Dragon Quest.
I kind of figured that. I mean, you want to say why real quick? I mean,
it's consistently good.
Okay.
Even the worst, though, even what you can consider the worst of the franchise is still better than a lot of other RPGs I've ever played.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, it's always a charming, simple RPG. And I don't believe that's a fault to the game at all. I think it's celebrating its roots by while still adding some minor modern enhancements to their later games. Just helps. Just keeps the. It just keeps making it a great series that it is.
Yeah. Well, for me, I put Final Fantasy, and I've always been a huge Final Fantasy fan. When I say series have consistently impressed me, that series has always consistently impressed me for like since I was a little kid. I mean, there's few series out there where you can honestly say like, hey, there's 15 games and like 12 of them are phenomenal. You know, so for me personally, Final Fantasy is my favorite JRPG franchise. What's your number two?
Number two is Final Fantasy.
Okay.
And what is so great about Final Fantasy is even though it has stumbled a few times in trying to evolve the genre, it certainly has done so, especially in its earlier days. Like Final Fantasy 1, I would feel is like the most at the time felt like the most mainstream RPG of the time. And over time it found ways to evolve the genre. Like they added the ATB gauge, they brought like cinematography with like Final Fantasy 7, and like they've just taken stories and video games to such incredible heights that other JRPG companies wish they could compare themselves to.
Mm-hmm.
And Final Fantasy is a legendary series for a reason. It does, I mean, it does everything, even if it like fails at times. I appreciate that it's always trying to push the genre forward.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. So for my number two, I kind of debated where I was going to put this, but I had to put it out there. It's going to seem like an odd one to y'all, but I have to put Pokemon on there. And the reason I got to put Pokemon on there is because when I was a little kid, I played hundreds of hours of the blue version of Pokemon. And then I played all the games after that as they came out. As they've come out recently, like I've kind of gotten out of it for a little bit because I feel like they keep making the same game. But I'm telling you, like where I really like learned to play RPGs was Pokemon. Man, I used to play the crap out of these games with my friends, and honestly, they're good RPGs. Like I still enjoy going back through the blue version and crystal version, especially, and just seeing like how kind of reliving those days of being a kid and going around the towns and collecting all the different monsters and everything you need to like make them evolve and everything like that. I think it is a really, really good series, and it's kind of like a series that really appeals to both adult audiences and kids. So for that reason, I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, Pokemon is definitely a solid series. I haven't played it really, honestly, since Blue and Red, but I appreciate how consistent they are with the quality of their games, and the people who are fans, I'm glad they're still getting enjoyment to this day. So I'm glad they are, and I'm sure the next Pokemon coming out in 2019 is going to be really good.
Yeah, hope so too.
My number three is, my top five are always going to change around, but another one I put in here for number three is the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. there's a lot of spin-offs to that game. But
yeah,
I can say for the main games at least, I've played translated. Games. Yeah, I've played translated ROMs of the first 2 games, and they're pretty solid. They're a little dated, but if you're a Shin Megami Tensei fan, they're definitely worth getting into. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne was such an uncomfortable game in all the right ways. Like, like it feels eerie, scary. Yeah, you really feel like sometimes you're alone in the world, and like discovering these parts of Tokyo and like how it's gotten demented. I mean, it's so fascinating, and I think it's like one of the top PS2 RPGs. I think everyone like deserves like should play that game. It is pretty punishingly hard, but I mean it's worth getting through. I think it's pretty fair in its difficulty. And then you have Shin Megami Tensei 4, which I think was really good also. I like 3 more still, but I think 4 did very good in its own right. It was really cool going to like this underground like post-apocalyptic like Tokyo or like again kind of in a way, but like you're like an elite group investigating
those games
someone.
Always seem like they have a very cool premise, like a very attractive premise to me.
Yeah,
I still have to jump into some of them, but
yeah, then you got some great spin-offs like Digital Devil Saga, the Persona series. I'm not the biggest on the Persona series since it's like more social than gameplay, I feel like sometimes.
Yeah.
But I mean that can be argued or debated, but that's just kind of how I feel with it sometimes. But I mean those are pretty. Persona itself has become a big franchise, and that's a spin-off game.
Yeah.
Like you got like spin-offs of spin-offs now, like Persona Q and dancing games with Persona. It's I mean, it's become a big franchise in itself, similar to how like Kingdom Hearts was in a way spin-off to Final Fantasy. And I mean, this series is very ambitious, and it's got a lot of unique storytelling that doesn't feel generic. And if you're someone who craves a little difficulty in their RPGs, then Shin Megami Tensei is a good way to go.
Very cool. So for me, for my number 3, I put the Shadow Hearts series. Now the reason I put this here is because this series kind of caught me off guard. I had just completed Final Fantasy X, and this was right around the time the game came out. And I went to the store trying to find another game like Final Fantasy X, and I still remember like my mom was frustrated because we were still at the game store. It'd been like a half hour, and finally she like asked the game guy, the guy that worked there, like, "Hey, can you help him pick a game?" And he was like, "Well, yeah. What do you like to play?" And I was like, "I want something like Final Fantasy X." And he's like, "Oh man, like that was a expensive game back then to make." So he's just sitting there like, "Well, you might not find something quite to that caliber, but like try this game out."
Or Final Fantasy 12,
which wasn't out yet, but yeah. So he was just like, "Try this game out." I heard like a lot of people that worked on the Final Fantasy games. They left the company and they started working on this game. A lot of people really like it. I think you'll like it too. So I got it. It was Shadow Hearts for the PS2, and I fell in love with that game. A lot of it is the premise behind, or like the world behind it, is very attractive to me. It's very vampire and very like cryptic, but it's got this like I don't know, like Constantine meets the Matrix vibe to it. I've always felt like, I don't know, it's weird, or like Van Helsing or something. But I really enjoy that world that it built. The music is exceptional. I really enjoyed the story. I really like the battle system. It's got our Judgment Ring system that really spices things up. So basically, when you miss enemies, it's because you screwed up. It's not because of a random number generator. And the sequels are great as well. The last game in the series, not so hot, but personally, I think the Shadow Hearts 1 and 2 are the best, and then third is Kodeka, which is a prequel that came out on the PlayStation. It was very impressive, I think, for a PlayStation game, but it's also kind of ridiculous and the production values of it. So like battles take like 20 minutes. It's and it's random encounters too. So it's kind of like, in that sense, it's not very good, but it does a lot of cool things. So I really like the series, and if somehow like they came out with a remastered version or possibly a new game, that would be amazing. But I doubt it, because the company that makes this game series doesn't make video games anymore. They make, I think, like gambling machines or something. So very, very disappointing. So
I haven't played the game since the PS2 era, so it would be interesting to take those on as a much older person. But
sure.
I do hope that they find a way to revive this in the sense that they make like an HD release of the 3 games.
Yeah, at least on Steam or something.
Yeah, or a Switch.
Or Switch, could easily do that.
Yeah, I would like to play that on the Switch and see what I think of them today. I remember enjoyed playing at least the first one when I played it. I don't remember what I thought of the second, third one, but I remember enjoying the first one. So it would be fun to go through those again.
Yeah, for sure.
My fourth, I put the Arc the Lad series, the series I talked about. Yeah. It's a fantastic series. It's got a good mix of the battle system. You're on a field similar to a strategy game, and your characters can only walk around a certain amount, like something similar to Final Fantasy Tactics, but it still has a very simplistic setup. Like you either attack or use magic, use items. There isn't no real heavy strategic value to it. It's just making sure you're in the right position, and it paces itself, and the battles pace itself like a normal JRPG, at least starting by the second game.
Yeah,
where you get in the battle with like a few enemies, and fights end like within 3 to 4 minutes. Like they don't take too long. It's not like something that takes like 15 to 20 minutes like a normal tactical game. So you do that, and you go through like the dungeons normally, like you would in the JRPG. And the thing that really gets me the most is that from Arc the Lad 1 to 2, it's one big story being told. So when you beat Arc the Lad 1, you convert your save data to the second one, and you continue it with your same stats on the characters from the first game. But if you start 2 without playing 1 first, it'll give you pre-established levels. But the caveat to that is that, or the catch is, if you don't play the first game, the second game will not have bonus scenes featuring the characters of the first game before they join up with the new characters in 2.
Yeah.
So you're missing out on story in the second game if you don't convert the save from the first one.
That's kind of interesting though, because these games came out at a time where like that wasn't really
it wasn't
that was kind of a unique feature, you know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of games that do it now. I know Dot Hack is famous for it.
Yeah.
But I mean, Arc the Lad was one of the first games to pave way for it. I'm not sure if it's the first to do it, but it is a series that did popularize it. And recently Sony has announced the mobile version that we talked about, and hopefully that gets popular enough that they're willing to revitalize the series in some form.
Yeah, I just Googled it, and I saw where Sony announced that at least in Japan, it's surpassed 500,000 downloads since its release on August 23rd. So that's pretty good, dude.
Bring it to the West, Sony. I know I complain about mobile games, but come on, give it.
That's one Eric will play. Cool. Very, very cool. So for me, when I was trying to think of this list, it was kind of hard for me because there's a lot of series in which there's games in them that I like, but then I've played other games that I didn't really like that much. And so it's kind of like really, I think if we were to pick our top 5 favorite JRPGs, it might be a little bit different, but I had to go with, first off, I had to go with Xenoblade Chronicles, just because that first game impressed me, and I'm assuming that I'm going to consider Xenogears and the Xenosaga franchise under the same umbrella. Now, I haven't played all the games and all of them, but everything that I've played has really, really impressed me a lot. And even like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I haven't played, But it has a ton of like anime like stuff that I'm not sure I'd really like. But the more I look at it and like the world that's built and like the aesthetic of the game and even this like DLC Torna the Golden Country, I mean a lot of it looks really really good. And I mean if you go back and play like Xenogears is amazing. Xenosaga, that franchise is at least the first one was really really good. So I mean, if anything that comes out in this kind of universe, or at least this, if it has Xeno on the game, I'm interested in it. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I think if I had more time, I would go back through and play some of the games that I haven't. But like for me right now, like I'm definitely really really interested in this series.
Man, I really hope they release an HD trilogy of Xenosaga. We haven't heard anything from it, but the guy who was part of the development team, or like the head of it for those games, it basically said, if you guys shout loud enough that Bandai Namco may re-release them, but we haven't heard anything since, so I don't know if anything's happening. I mean, of course I love the first Xenoblade game. I mean, we had a whole discussion video on that and I was just gushing all over it. Xenoblade Chronicles X I really didn't like. That wasn't I had a lot of complaints about that.
It had a really like, again, these games have a really cool like world that they build, and I think there's a lot of good ideas in it. And like again, like I haven't beaten it or anything, but like from what I got hands on with it and everything, like it seemed like it had a lot of good ideas. It was just, it seemed like by the time they finished it, like they realized some of the ideas weren't that well panned out.
And I didn't care too much for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but I thought the story wasn't bad, or like decent to not bad. There's some things about it I didn't like. Obviously, I don't care for the character design. Xenoblade Ones is just vastly superior to it. They got some like, I mean, they kind of look like generic most of the time.
Yeah,
but it has a decent story. I understand why people really like the story and were very excited for the big DLC. And I'll give them props. That is a mighty hefty DLC. That is like, people are saying that is like the almost the length of a full JRPG.
I was gonna say, it seems like another game. Like I'm almost more interested in the DLC than I am the base game.
Some people have said you can play the DLC without playing the main game.
That's what I've heard, but I'm not that type of person.
Like, yeah, I think you get more out of the story knowing about things in Xenoblade 2, but if you went to the store and bought that DLC by itself and play it, I think you could. From what I've heard, you can follow the story just fine. I want to do it one day. I want to finish Xenoblade 2 one day, but the gameplay just frustrates me to no end. And it's not that the game is hard. It's that they throw so much crap at you, like the outdoor field skills and the systems within systems. I've complained about it before, but just in short, I don't care for the gameplay aspect of it.
Yeah.
But the world and story is interesting enough.
Yeah, to me, it's all about the world. The world's very, very unique, and I don't feel like I'm playing something that's like stale. Like it always feels like it's like something that's like fresh and new. So I really appreciate that. What do you got for your number 5?
This is a simple one. Mario and Luigi.
Very, very cool.
I think it has always a simple, funny, charming story. The battle system never feels old because it focuses a lot, like the original Super Mario RPG. I feel like Mario and Luigi evolved that a bit with their timed hits, with like actively jumping and like dodging things like that. I think they did a good job evolving that formula. And they always have some cool, quirky concept, like, and it doesn't feel like that generic, we have to go through the 8 worlds and beat Bowser at the end. It's like they have interesting, unique stories to each one.
Yeah. Very, very cool. For me, man, this number 5 was hard for me to pick because it's just like, I don't know, man, your 5th favorite franchise. Like, it's like, that's kind of like, so I was throwing some ideas around. I was like, well, maybe Disgaea, because I like those games, but I don't know if like a lot of them feel the same to me.
The first 2 are just obviously Dragon Quest and then Final Fantasy. Then after that, it's, It's kind of like a mix around. I don't think of one over the other.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about the Golden Sun, but I've only played the first two, and I only really liked the first one, to be honest. So, Star
the first
Ocean,
two are technically one story.
Yeah, but regardless, that's I just like the first game better.
Better than the DS one, definitely. Yeah.
So, Star Ocean, again, I've only played a few of those, and I only really liked one of them. So it was hard for me to pick that. But these were some kind of like honorable mentions that I thought like I might put on there. But I just said, you know what, I'm gonna put Dragon Quest on there because I haven't played all of them, but I played Dragon Quest 1. Growing up, I played that a lot. I really enjoyed it. I played the crap out of Dragon Quest 3 growing up on my Game Boy. I really enjoyed that. Recently, I played Dragon Quest 5. I really like that one, and I've been playing Dragon Quest 11, and I've really been enjoying this one. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, you know what? Like, I haven't had a bad game yet. Like, the series has consistently delivered for me. I haven't had an experience like where I felt like, you know what, this isn't very good. And I've had that with a lot of these other games, even like the Saga franchise. I don't know. I only played Final Fantasy's Legend on the Game Boy 1, 2, and 3. So I played crap out of those when I was a kid, but I always preferred Dragon Quest 3 on the Game Boy. So to those, but so I'm gonna go with Dragon Quest just because it's always so far delivered for me. But who knows? Maybe I'll play one where I don't like it as much.
Good man, but worked that up to number 1.
Well, it almost got dethroned, but anyways, y'all, I was gonna read some comments, but we are currently at 104 or 100
1 hour and
46 minutes. So yeah. I know there's some comments on there. I'll go through and try to respond to a couple of them. I know that's not as cool as us talking on the podcast. I apologize about that, but we are recording this on a Monday night, and we want to be able to get some sleep and do some other things. So sorry about that, but again, leave your comments and we'll get to them next week. And appreciate you all listening. Eric, you got any final thoughts?
Dragon Quest number 1.
All right. Take it easy, guys.
Take care.